Good evening, everyone. My name is Jason. I'm the president and founder of Mach 30, and this is the September 2014 Reports Hangout. I'm very excited to join you. We missed last month. There were too many of us traveling to too many different places, and all of us in the wrong time zones when this was supposed to happen. So we dropped the ball there. But there's been all sorts of exciting news to report, and so I'm very excited to bring you the update that sort of is part August and part July. I'm joined this evening by Chris Sigmund, advisor of the board of directors, and he's going to MC for us. For those of you that aren't familiar with Mach 30, we are a nonprofit dedicated to advancing humanity into a spacefaring civilization. We are completely dependent on the generous donations of time and by our volunteers and backers. I strongly urge you to take a look at mach30.org and take a look in the upper right-hand corner. Subscribe to our channel. That's down here somewhere, I think. And without further ado, I will turn things over to Chris.
Okay, thanks, Jay. I think the first thing is a special topic, actually. Jay has finally finished his PhD.
Thank you. Yep. I'm very happy to report that my document is fully approved, that all the right signatures are in place. I am technically still going through a couple of academic hoops to get the paperwork finalized, but the research itself is fully approved, and it's all about designing a rocket engine, which is kind of spiff. I want to thank very much all volunteers at Mach who have put up with my coming and going kind of randomly the last 6 months. But I'm very happy to say it resulted in 376 pages of rocket engine glory.
Do you want to give like a 1 minute just summary of?
Yeah, so I could read you the abstract, I suppose, but no, seriously. Basically, the idea is that that's a series of design of experiment and optimization tools to look at the possibility of a modification to a very traditional rocket engine architecture called the expander cycle to improve performance, basically to give it better thrust weight, which is one of the key metrics we use in a rocket engine's measuring a rocket engine's performance, and while also maintaining an acceptable specific impulse, which is kind of like the fuel economy of your car for a rocket engine. So the cool news is that I was able to get computer models to work well enough. We were able to look at a whole bunch of different design cases, and in all of those cases, the computer simulations say that this new architecture is an improvement over the existing version of it. So I'm very excited to report that. My defense was a lot of fun because of that. It's always a lot more fun to show promising results. And one of my committee members is actually my computer simulations and continues them to research to the next level. And he hasn't finished telling me what that looks like, but I'm hoping someday that we'll see engines that look a lot like.
Cool. So moving on, we have the open source spaceflight hardware bus. The first thing on the docket is ground sphere.
And Aaron is able to join us tonight, and I will admit I'm on travel still, and again, so I haven't had time to catch up with him in corner to hear how things are going, so I don't think we'll do a report on this month. My objective, though, is to make sure that one way or the other we can report on at the beginning of October. I'm looking forward. I think we're very close to being able to wind it down. The last time I heard from things at a Reports Hangout, we were very close to putting the bow on it.
Right. So the other part of the open source spaceflight hardware bus right now is the export control free roadmap. Specifically, we're looking at starting work on that. Jay, do you want to tell everybody else more?
Yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit more about planning towards the end of the Hangout because it's an operational thing. But part of that work, and this is stuff that came out of Apogee, so we mentioned this in bits and pieces before, is that we want to buy for the export control task force to do its work without the engineering teams running afoul of export control accident, had everyone walking on eggshells. We don't want that to happen anymore. So based on some preliminary work, we're pretty confident that we're going to be able to find something, a category of work that we're already doing. I'm not sure exactly which one it'll be yet, but we're going to extend some of our current existing projects to develop a series of projects that stay away from the export control boundaries and are doing so intentionally. That we have a series of projects we'll roadmap out so we can by that time. And the big news about this, other than the background of it, is as we wrap up Ground Sphere here over the next little bit, that we're going to turn the remainder of our time in the engineer speaking out primarily toward this. And that because of that, we're going to shake up who's leading what buses for a little while. And for at least the next little bit, I will be taking over running the engineer speak hangouts from Jeremy to facilitate this process so that we can hopefully by early next year be able to present to our entire volunteer order base the projects we plan on working on for the next little while.
Sounds good.
And by next little while, I mean a couple of years, like a year or two. We'll see how long we get.
Yeah.
For a while.
Yeah. So moving on from the open source spaceflight hardware bus, we have our support for the open source hardware community. And the first part of that we have tonight is a report about Open Design Engine. Specifically, over the last month, we've been finishing up some testing of the upgrade that we had been working on to Redmine 2.2. And that has wrapped up to our satisfaction at the moment. All of the bugs for that version that we found have been fixed. And at this point, we are actually looking to move, instead of releasing 2.2.3 or whichever version it is, onto Open Design Engine, we're actually looking at upgrading, sort of skipping ahead even further to 2.5.2, which is the current latest release of Redmine. The reason for that is because the 2.2 series of Redmine is old enough now where it's difficult to set up a environment for it. And in moving to 2.5.2, it looks like from preliminary testing that it should be relatively trivial now that we have the 2.2 base. Most of the things that we needed to change for the 2.2 series apply to the 2.5 series. So we're not expecting it to be nearly as lengthy time to perform the upgrade and to test it. That's about it. I'm just going to wait for Jay to catch up on minutes, and then we'll move on.
Excellent. That's very, very exciting news, Chris. I know that this is one of the things that has been kicking around for a little while and is one of those, I call these kind of maintenance tasks gardening for software projects. I talk a lot about that at work too. That gardening of these of major software projects is every bit as important, if not in some ways more so, than developing the new features. And I know we've done quite a bit of work on visioning and designing the visual enhancements and the new theme, but this, while not nearly as exciting, is absolutely essential. So I'm excited to see the gardening happening.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jay. Um, so the next item under supporting open source hardware community is Mach 30's contributions to building open source hardware by Alicia Gibbs of the Open Source Hardware Association.
Yeah, so this was pretty exciting. In what was probably the least useful timing for me personally, but was just an absolute stunning opportunity, so I couldn't pass it up. I got an email some months ago from Alicia about a book she's writing, and now has finished writing and has submitted for publication, and it's coming out in December, called Building Open Source Hardware. And it's basically lessons learned from the community and the history of the movement and what it means to be open source hardware might be headed and all. I've seen the chapter list and I can't remember all the details, but it looks like a really great book. And she asked a number of folks that are involved in the open source hardware community to share anecdotes, stories, and their own small lessons learned that dovetail in with the topic she was writing about. And so she was like, hey, do you want to write about something related to Mach 30, maybe export controls, maybe you've got some other ideas. And so I've been kicking around potential blog posts and other things like that for a while, but not able to get around to finishing them because of, well, my dissertation. And this came in right as I was trying to wrap up my dissertation. But I wrote her back and said, well, I've got a few things. What about this? What about this? What about this? And she was like, can I have all the things? And so I said, maybe. We'll see how fast I can write. And I got half of them done for her, and they're all going in the book. I'm very, very excited to say. And they are what I have come to coin as the Open Source Hardware Prime Directive, which in short is if someone else can't replicate it, you're not done. And this goes for your overall design as well as your tests or your operating procedures, any of that kind of stuff. The next one is a draft version of ground rules for open source hardware at Mach 30. These are based on things that we've talked about at Hangouts that the board has discussed, and we will be presenting these more formally very soon. I need to run them by the board one more time, and we'll bring them out before the entire community for feedback. But they are things like minutes or napping at a meeting. Basically, the idea here, with these kind of things, is what do you need to do to encourage strong development of open source hardware projects? How are you going to ensure that you are working transparently and working towards something that's replicable? And then the last one that I managed to finish up for her, along similar lines, is a set of documentation ground rules for open source hardware at Mach 30. And these are things like write it down before you do it, write it down while you do it, write it down when you finish, and stuff like that. This includes even like a draft bill of materials. If you're going shopping for parts at the local electronics store or the local hardware store, draft out a partial bill of materials. Even if you're like, I don't know which switch I'm going to use. You need a switch and it's a single throw switch. Okay, write that much down and put it in your ROM. You go to the store, grab the part when you get all the ones. I mean, I do this. I pick the bins like everyone else does. Like, no, too big, too small. This one's just right. And I'll do lots of switches apparently. And write that down. There, you've got it, and you have a place to put it. Bring a hard copy and take notes on it. And then when you get back, update the electronic copy from your notes on your hard copy. Stuff like this. So none of this is hard, and none of it is Mother Superior is going to come after you. These are the things that we all need to remember to do, all of us, myself included, in order to have successful open source hardware projects that are well documented and are replicable, which means that they're really going to have an impact on the world. And that's really what we're here to do. And I'm very, very excited to have been asked by Liz to join in this collaborative endeavor where I'm sitting next to a bunch of other people that we know from industry that we've met at conferences or watched at conferences, and be included among those as an organization and as an individual was a big, big honor. So, Alicia, if you wind up doing this at some point, thank you very much. I'm deeply touched, and I'm very excited for us to get some coverage in print.
Thanks, Jay. That was actually awesome.
Thank you.
That didn't come out quite like I wanted to say it, but it did.
It's okay. That's okay.
Our next bus is education outreach, and our main topic, the main thing that happened in that avenue for the last month was Jay actually was down in the DC Baltimore area with Greg and I for a visit.
Live into the agenda, another one. Um,
Oh, yes, that's a good point. So there is another one to follow.
Sorry, I just remembered it because it happened last night. But I'll talk real quick about the one that happened this past weekend. So I have been very fortunate lately to be on a lot of travel for work, and I always try to connect up with local makerspaces and our volunteer base when I do travel. And this past week, I was in Baltimore, and I got to spend the holiday weekend in DC. And two of my favorite volunteers and Mach 30 partners in crime are in that area. Chris, who is on the Hangout right now, is in Baltimore, and Greg, Mach 30 vice president and one of the chief instigators of, hey, let's go ahead and incorporate this thing, is now stationed in the DC area. So I got to visit with them, and while I was there, we went to the Uvar Hazy Museum and looked at all sorts of cool space art, including the Shuttle Discovery. If you'll notice, my hat is different than usual. It is the Atlantis exhibit hat. I have actually, in the last couple weeks, I'm just going to geek out for 2 seconds because it's my hangout and I can do that. I've gotten to see 2 of the 3 orders in their museum exhibits, and that was pretty awesome. But we got to talk a lot about the present and future of Mach 30 and ways that we could work together. There's a lot of talk of rocket shops and whether or not we should try to form one up in the DC area. Also visited 2 makerspaces up there. Went to, is it Node, Baltimore, or Baltimore Node?
Baltimore Node.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Baltimore Node. I have name dyslexia apparently. So yeah, it was a great space. They have a donation bucket that is in the shape of a rocket. We need one of those badly. I must make one. It's high on my list of maker space projects. I'm going to add sound effects though, so it goes 3, 2, 1. I'm having a night. Bear with me. We also went to Nova Labs, which is in the middle of an expansion, which is always cool to come to a makerspace as they're getting ready to move into new digs. I've done this twice now, and I think it is one of the most exciting times a makerspace can experience. So that was super exciting. I'm hopeful that there are going to be projects that we can maybe try to do with both of them. There are certainly people interested in space and rocketry at both spaces. So I'm really hoping we'll get to do something with them at some point, and I am looking forward to more discussions about whether or not it makes sense to put a rocket shop around DC. It would be our first, and it would be cool.
I totally agree. I personally am super psyched about the idea of a rocket shop or makerspace more towards DC that also has a rocket shop in it, or any other scheme we can figure out where Mach 30 has sort of its own little area to do maker things instead of everybody having their own copy.
Amen. Amen.
Which there's definitely positives to everybody having their own copy.
Well, it's a little bit of both, I think, is important. I like to talk about it that the unit of work for open source software development, the smallest increment of workable human resource is some coder with a laptop in a Starbucks. That's enough. If you got one of those, you can produce open software. But I think as we get bigger, as we start to build bigger projects, and as open source hardware as a movement builds bigger projects, start to think that the smallest increment of human resources is going to be some sort of team in a physically co-located space. And for us, I think in more general, it means makerspaces and makerspaces, fab labs, and shops, and purpose-built facilities for really special projects. So like there are some open source car groups that have their own facilities because they're part of for-profit enterprises and they need their facilities to do manufacturing in. And I think that makes sense. And for us, that's what a rocket ship is. It's purpose-built equipment either in a co-located space or in a dedicated space, depending on the situation, to enable people to come together in the same physical space to create that minimum unit of work for larger scale projects.
So the next thing we wanted to talk about in the education and outreach bus was a presentation that Jay and I was there, did last night to the Grand Rapids Makers.
Yeah, and so for the record, the only reason that I did all the talking is we were so behind because of all my travel, we didn't finish prepping until the night before, and that really meant we didn't have a chance to rehearse. So totally counts as far in my book. Anyway, what we did was we pitched open engine. So I think we talked a little bit about this in the reports hangout immediately following Apogee, about this idea about identifying the communities that have interest in our work as not being a single open source space hardware community, but really the overlap and intersections of the space community and the maker community and the open source hardware community. And as part of that, we're really trying to look at how we approach people in these different groups and bring them pieces of what we do that are of most interest to them and can be the most valuable to them so that they get back out of Mach 30 what they put into Mach 30. And for the maker community, one of those things we're experimenting with is the value of open design engine for makers just to be able to have somewhere to easily share their projects. And there's certainly a very open source hardware bent to ODE, but even beyond that, makers are looking for some way of sharing their projects. So if we can present them a way of doing that, I think that's a way for us to reach out. And so we did a little about 5 or 10 minutes, showing the cool features, ease of use, and stuff like that, over at makers over Hangout. And I think it was pretty well received. Chris, you I think some really great commentary on some email discussions. You should do your color commentary again because I think that was all great reflections.
Yeah, so my sort of general reflection on the night was that, on the presentation, was that there were definitely a couple of really received.
Can you go back? I missed you. Like you cut out. I don't know if it was me or you, but
Oh, sorry. There were definitely a couple of people at GR Makers that received ODE pretty well. I thought they seemed to really buy into the idea, and they sounded like they could potentially use it in the future. One person in particular mentioned a project that that GR Makers as a team was about to finish. That had they known, they would have been inclined to actually use it. Um, so there was definitely some positives there. On a sort of larger scale, I think we sort of had a little bit of a lesson learned in our pitch to makerspaces, which was that we really need to focus on the sharing aspect of it, like what the value is of them being able to share on ODE. That if a maker is building a project, if they share it on ODE, they'll be able to get a reach that they wouldn't be able to get otherwise in people seeing their projects, telling them how cool it is, or potentially giving them feedback to say, like, you know what, this is awesome, but what would make it like mind-blowing is if you added this whistle to it. So even though I think we could have focused on it more in the pitch, I think it was really good that we had that experience because I like I said, I think there were a couple of people there that I think will I'd give it a 80% chance that they'll use OD for a project in the future. And we learned, I think, a pretty valuable lesson for talking to other maker spaces about OD in the future.
Greg a little bit. I think the last part is the most valuable piece. He's reminding us you hit zero, you hit zero bat, hit zero ball, you don't right. Saying that you don't hit, you don't swing. Um, we have to do more pitches. We have to interact with more groups if we want more opportunities to be received. And even when they go well, when they don't immediately receive like standing ovations, the lessons we learn from them are equally as valuable, um, or if not more. Absolutely. Thank you. I think you're spot on with all of that.
I guess moving on once more, we've got the business operations not bush. Uh, there's no H in that word. So the first thing is an update on insurance.
Alrighty. So uh, this is one of those ever ongoing issues of ops. I keep thinking we're about to wrap it up and put a bow on it and buy some insurance so that we can sell some kits when the kits become available. And it's a two-step forward with that kind of games. Um, had a really great interaction with our broker. However, that interaction did not include all the good news I wanted to hear. So apparently there's some concern that even publishing some of our designs is equivalent to distributing them like in a sales kind of way. So we're still left with the question of how does Shepherd influence our insurance rates, which is a little disappointing. But our broker continues to be very excited about us as a fan, so we're going to continue to work with you. But yeah, we don't have a bow on quite yet. It's just part of the process. For those that are like me, that are like, I thought we were closed, I thought this was done. This is just how this stuff works. We are doing things that very few, if not possibly no one else does, and that is going to be something that brings about unknowns. It means that we just have to work through each and every one of them. And sometimes those unknowns are engineering, and then engineers people get to deal with that and do business. Sometimes business operations, they're extra control of their organization paperwork, and just be patient and work through the processes as much as we are engineering. But I want to emphasize again, I'm going to channel Greg out with Greg. I'm full of Greg's enthusiasm and his point of view again. That's one of the things that I like about all of us being from some of our projects and get to participate again. That to channel Greg, the actual guy that we're working with, a broker, is very enthusiastic about our work. So that is good news. While we don't have things solved in terms of the nuts and bolts of an insurance package, we do have someone who's willing to work with us and is interested in seeing us succeed and help us. We will be able to do this stuff because of that relationship.
So the next thing after insurance is a planning update.
Yep. So the major action items coming out of Apogee was to the annual plan for the remainder of this year. For folks that are new to Mach 30, So planning process rhythm. At the beginning here, we are long range strategic and develop a tactical plan for the year. And at the middle of the year, in the summer, we reflect on our strategic plans and update to them. So the summer meeting is Apogee, a point in the orbit when has its largest widest closest point in orbit, and is when things are moving quick and you're transitioning to the orbit quick. Actually, this year, we actually need to wrap up the tactical planning for this year because this is our first year using the rhythm, and we didn't have this year fully laid out tactically. The board over the last 2 meetings is coming very close for the year planned. Also, developing a roadmap out of this planning work. Things of the upcoming business meetings to everyone shortly. And to it's going to we're going to really, when we start doing these tactical plans, now we've got this new rhythm, the tactical plans are going to be very aggressive about ensuring that we have properly scoped the work for our year. So I think that's starting to reflect in the change of length in our reports hangouts. Notice that we don't have 80 gazillion things we're reporting on. We're really laser focused on the stuff that we can be making progress on. And I think that will continue to be, that is the intention, that we continue to be that kind of focused.
And that's about it. The only other thing left is developing new enabling spaceflight technologies, and that bus doesn't have anything to report for the night.
That bus shouldn't have anything, honestly, to report for several years. We just carried around waiting for us to advance to a point where mature technology is not sufficient. So, hope that bus doesn't have anything for a long time. Thank you for seeing. I really did it. A lot of these reports fell to me tonight, and so it's nice not to be the only one looking. And thank you all for your support and for your interest in our mission. Again, check us out at mach30.org and click on the donate to find and support us financially. And somewhere down here, I'm going to learn the YouTube isms eventually, but somewhere down here there's a subscribe link to our channel so you get all of the reports to more videos. And as always, I wish you good night and ad astra persivitatem to the stars through community.